I drew this comic just to kind of illustrate how absurd life is and really how little control we have over it. As much as we think, as much as we want to believe that we have, like ultimate agency or free will, responsibility, whatever you want to call it, over our lives, that is just not the case. I mean, I'm sitting here in my parents' kitchen in suburban Pennsylvania, just about 2 years removed from when I moved from Boston, where I went to college, to New York City to start my adult life, right? And my gosh, the past 2 years have not at all been what I had planned. Because if you'd asked me back in August of 2021, Dennis, what's next? What's your plan, right? I probably would have given you some sort of answer like 2 years in investment banking, followed by another 2 years in private equity, followed by another 2 years in like some top five, top seven MBA program, which here in the US is just like a master's degree. That is literally 6 years of my life. 6 years. Already sort of planned out, already kind of laid out neatly for me, steps to follow, before I even started living it, right? And that's, I guess, the absurdity of having plans, right? Is that we try to grasp onto certainty when certainty is just about the last thing, the last quality of life that we can be sure of, right? And when I think about my own plan, right, this 6 year plan, which by all intents and purposes was not mine, right, which we'll talk about, this plan, it has been around for way longer than you or I have been, like decades on decades on decades. It's nothing new, right? It's this tried and true formula that is going to supposedly lead you to the promised land of success, which so much of society treats as, fancy degrees, job titles, salaries, you name it. This plan is supposed to get you there. And when I graduated college and I had no idea sort of like what this next chapter, this void that is adulthood, had in store for me, I mean, I guess like you'd be damn sure I want to be quote unquote successful, at least in some way, shape, or form, even if it wasn't my own. And that's kind of the issue here, right? Is that this answer of mine, this 6 year plan leading to success, wasn't my own, right? I might have picked it, might have, well, no, definitely read about it off of like the internet or heard about it from someone else, but I didn't create it, right? I didn't create it from my heart, from my mind. It wasn't me. So, unsurprisingly, I'm sitting here talking to you, and I'm definitely not starting a job in private equity. Far from that. I actually have no job. I'm not looking for another one, which we'll talk about. And yeah, I mean, I have this YouTube channel, I write, have some other things I want to do, but just about the furthest thing I could be from this magical plan or blueprint of mine, right? The thing is, this plan of mine, it crashed and burned after 6 months, which maybe you've heard me talk about. Yeah, I quit my first job out of school after 6 months, but the more absurd part is that I was already questioning it from day one. From day one of starting adulthood, of being on this path, this plan. Day one of 6 years. I don't know like what the math is on that. 6 times 365. It's like 2,200 days or something, right? And on the first one, I was already like, oh shit, this is it. And I say this is it as like, both a question and a statement, right? Because the moment that I stepped foot into the office in Midtown Manhattan in my nice fancy business casual as a 22-year-old fresh investment banking analyst, I was like, there's no way that this quote unquote prestigious job that so many people, claw tooth and nail for, this is it? Like just sitting in a bleak cubicle with like white LED lights coming down, wearing the same white or light blue button up as everyone else, just like tapping away at a computer screen for like 60, 80, whatever many hours a week. Yeah, I was not particularly excited or thrilled. And the fact that this was supposed to be like my career, which is a huge part of everyone's life as an adult, right? Like what they do with most of their time for the next 40, however many years. Yeah, I had no answer. I was just literally just jaw dropped just like that. But the thing is, right, that's no surprise because even before I started this job on day one, like August 23rd, 2021, I believe. Wow, which is almost 2 years exactly to the day, which is crazy. I was already not excited. And if you're not excited for life, for your future, then are you really living at that point? I mean, should have seen the warning signs, I guess, right? I mean, I remember being quite literally in this exact house, my parents' house, and when I got my return offer 3 years ago, the summer before I started my senior year at college, going down those stairs, going down the hall to where my parents were, sharing the news with them, and there was a lot of smiling, a lot of congratulations, we're proud of you. But the moment I went upstairs and really sat with myself, I felt nothing. And that should have been the first sign, right? That emptiness that I wasn't excited for this next big step, this next big chapter of my life. But I carried that into my last year at college because at that point I was just like, thank gosh, I'm done. I'm done with this job shit. Like, I don't want to think about this until I have to. I'm just going to enjoy the rest of college and really just try to live life. And I did, right? I went through my last year of college until the spring around graduation time when I was like, oh shit, adulthood's coming up, and oh shit, there's this thing called my job, my career, my adulthood that I'm like not super sure about. I wasn't super sure about it because it wasn't my answer, right? Which might sound weird to you, right? Like, how could it not be your answer, right? And when I think about that, it's because I didn't ask myself, what do I want out of life, right? Who do I want to be? What do I want to do? It felt like I was asking myself, what should I do? What do I think I want to do, right? Like, what makes sense? Thinking with the mind and not feeling with the heart. And in that sense, right, like so many of us, right? And I'm not sure like what chapter or stage of life you're in right now, but we get asked these questions about like what's next? What's your 5-year plan? Right around that time in your life when there's one major chapter ending and another one's sort of beginning, right? Whether it's the end of high school or primary school, and you're going on to college, right? Because all of a sudden, at what, like 18 years old, you're being asked, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Which is, wow, if that isn't a loaded question, I don't know what is. Because to expect someone to know what they want to do with their life at 18 is just ridiculous, right? Because how many 18-year-olds can seriously say that they know themselves? Like truly know themselves. I mean, there are literally 20, 30, 40, 50, 60-year-olds who don't know themselves. And when you don't know yourself, how are you supposed to know what you want to do with your life? And that was definitely me, right? When I went into school, I had no idea who I was, no idea what I wanted to do. So I just picked some answer out of a hat that was like, I'm going to study business, and just pray for the best. And I stuck true to that, right? I stuck true to that answer because the last thing I wanted was to be that kid who, you know, teeter totters back and forth. The kid who, like, you hear who switches degrees or majors like 3 times throughout the course of college, because that's the kid who you point the finger at and you're like, that kid has no idea what they're doing with their lives. And everyone's like, shit, I don't want to be that kid who doesn't know what they're doing with their life. Because all of a sudden, when you hit this like magic age of like 18, whether or not you go to, school or you just start working or doing whatever else, right? You're expected to know. Like there's this imaginary spectrum of either having no fucking clue what you want to do with your life and having it quote unquote figured out. There is just like no in between. It's like you're just like at one end or the other. And if you don't have a clue, you're behind. But if you have it figured out, then you're ahead. Safe to say, I did not want to be behind. Like in so many other ways in my life, I was driven by this insecurity of not being ahead, right? Of not being like this overachiever or whatever. Own story in itself. And on the outside, right, it seemed like I had it figured out, right? I had my job lined up. I had this plan for what the next however many years of my life would look like. But deep down, I was just insecure as hell. Just like so many people are who have these thought out plans, right? Because ultimately, plans are just this form of control, right? Like I said earlier, you're trying to grasp at certainty when there is no such thing as certainty in life. Because you're afraid, right? You're fearful of what comes next, of what lays ahead for you in the future, right? And plans, answers, they give you some degree of certainty that you can take with you, right? That is sort of like, you're walking into the dark, but you've got a flashlight, or you know that there's going to be like some light source on the wall, or maybe you're running to a ledge to take a leap, and you know that you're going to make it to the other side, or that there's going to be like some net below you to catch you, right? You want that sort of confidence, that belief in yourself, because you want to feel safe, right? You want to know what comes next because you don't trust yourself to navigate what's to come. And when you do that, what you're really doing is discounting your potential, right? Which, let me tell you, I am really good at discounting my own potential. Spent a lot of time in my life discounting my potential. But the thing is, and if there's anything the past 2 years of my life have taught me, is that potential only lays in the future, right? And who you are now is on the precipice of that. Because you can't predict what happens next. How many times in life have you been able to say that, wow, everything has gone exactly to plan? I definitely can't say I can. I definitely can't. It's like trying to, oh, this is the worst. It's like trying to have the movie plot before you watch it, right? It's like you already know how it ends because you want to be ready for like when the jump cuts happen, which I definitely did that like, very openly when I'd watch like a scary movie. And I guess that kind of takes away the fun of it, right? Because what's the fun of living life when you know what happens next? It takes away all the spontaneity, all the surprise. It takes the fun away from experiencing things for the first time because you're already just sort of like priming yourself for it. You're trying to live before you really live, just like I did. And you can't live potential until you experience it. And the thing with potential is it only happens when you experience life. And so often, the most valuable experiences in life come when they're least expected, when they are unplanned for, when they are all but uncertain. And I played video games growing up, so excuse my, I guess, like geekiness here, but when I thought about potential and the journey of life, I think about it like this, right? Where and who you are right now in this very moment as we're having this conversation, your current self, if someone were to ask you, what's next? What's your 5-year plan? You give an answer, all you're doing is picking your current self, which, let's say for illustrative purposes, is like level 5. And you're just like placing that level 5 version of yourself however much time in the future with all the same thoughts, perspectives, experiences, values, you name it. Life changes, but somehow you don't, right? Which we'll get to. A lot of people don't change as much as they claim to. But the thing is, in that whatever range of time, that spectrum of time in between when you answer right now in this moment and the future, so much can happen, right? When I gave you my answer to what's next or what's your plan, and I gave you like those 3 bullet points, right? 2 years in banking, 2 years in private equity, 2 years in a grad program. All I gave you were 3 bullet points to try and capture like 2,000 days of my life without considering every moment in between. Because every moment there's a possibility for change and transformation, whether it's right after this conversation, whether it's next week, next month, next year, next 2, 5, whatever, right? You can't predict it. And every experience, every one of those moments of uncertainty that really shake you up, have you change your perspective, have you grow and transform in some way, those raise, those elevate your potential. And this graphic may or may not be self-inspired, but just some thoughts that come to mind, right? It's like, let's say you have that first breakup, that first heartbreak in your life, whether it's that middle school crush, the high school, the college crush, whatever. And all the other times that, maybe you called your friends, your parents, and, they stitched you back up, that heart of yours. Instead, you taught yourself how to sew. You healed yourself. Maybe it's when you leave that unhealthy situation, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, work, whatever, and you start prioritizing yourself. When you start to live more authentically, when you start to prioritize the other aspects of your health or any aspect of your health, right? Whether it's physical health, mental health, spiritual health, you name it. When you start to give yourself love, all of those moments, all of those little seasons or chapters in life, those raise your potential. And by the end of it all, like let's just say arbitrarily, you're level 20, you've discounted 15 levels of growth and transformation, 15 levels of your potential. And the thing is, as much as I use like numbers like 5 or 20 and 15 to try and illustrate what I'm trying to say, potential, it can't be quantified, right? It's not like conventional measures of success, which is like how much money you make, right? What rank school you go to, whatever it may be. Potential is only felt. You only feel something when you experience it firsthand. And the thing about potential is that as cheesy as it sounds, it's truly limitless. Your potential in life for who you can become is absolutely limitless. And ultimately, that's the most important piece, right? Is that who you become in this life, who you are in this life day to day, that determines what you do with your life. That determines how you feel on a day to day. And how can you try to plan for that without waking up and just living it? So maybe that's my way of saying that, you know, plans are useless. By all means, if you have a plan and you want to toss it out the window and I don't know, parents, teachers, peers, whoever want to get mad at someone, feel free to direct them, not me, you know, I will sign off on it. But that's the thing, is that whatever plans we try to have right now in our life, we're going to outgrow them, right? Because ultimately, you're going to outgrow yourself. The only way to outgrow yourself is if you allow yourself, if you give yourself the grace, the space, the opportunity to change and transform, right? Because so many people, I'll tell you, they don't. As much as people claim to, they don't. Because they're so attached to this answer of theirs, this version of themselves that they've been living by, this level 5 version of that they've been living by, and they're afraid of change. Because human beings, they are wired to avoid change. Because change is uncertainty, uncertainty is danger, and danger is not safe. And we all want to feel safe, right? When you don't give yourself that room to change, you're limiting yourself. You're discounting the potential you have. The ability you have to navigate the uncertainty, what comes next, what's on the other side, what's in the dark, so on and so forth, right? And if you never give yourself that opportunity to develop that sense of self, that reliance, you live life scared, and you also just live a life. It's not your own, right? It's a life of shoulds, of responsibilities, of being realistic, not one of wants, aspirations, and dreams. And the only way that you can create this space for you to emerge into your potential is to really take a step back and give yourself the freedom to ask the questions and not seek the answers. Because when you take someone else's answer, just like I did, you're taking their perspectives, their values, their experiences, and applying that to yourself. When each and every one of us is uniquely different, each and one of us has our own unique potential, our own purpose in life. When we take someone else's answer and we live by it, we live their life and not our own. And maybe that's why people aren't excited for life. It's because they're not living the life they hoped and dreamed of when they were kids. And the only way that I've found that we can really live that life, to create that life that we dream of, is to keep asking ourselves that question. What are my dreams? What do I want out of life, right? Not what your brain thinks, right? Because your brain is like this rational factory input output machine that only thinks about what makes sense, right? How many times have you gone into situations that make sense and you don't feel so great about them? Because you picked the practical, the rational, the safe decision rather than the one that tugged at your heart. Yeah. Because when I think about 2 years ago when I started working full time and being an adult, I remember so often I would be showering or something before work. I'd be walking to the office and I would just think about, gosh, what if I were a YouTuber? Here I am, right? Giving yourself that space to really answer for yourself what you want out of life and get rid of all the responsibilities, the shoulds, whether it's coming from your parents, your peers, society, whoever, and listen to that inner voice within you and what they want. And when you ask that question, what are my dreams? What do I want out of life? You can't stop asking because so much can change, right? When I think about where I was back in March of 2022 when I started this channel, or December of 2021 when I decided for myself that I'm going to quit this path I was on and, pursue this childhood dream of mine, I really only envisioned the dream as like YouTube, right? I discounted all of the potential for change, all the different paths and rabbit holes I might stumble down. Because now I don't really know if I can call myself a YouTuber. I think I'm just far more than that, right? I am far more than that. Because my potential is limitless, just like yours. Right now, like, obviously, I haven't really been as active on YouTube for a bit, but I've been doing other things that pull at my heart, that cause me to lean forward in my chair, like writing, drawing, just learning, living life. All of the things that I dream of now. Whenever I ask myself that question, right? Because even in the year and some change that I've done YouTube, I've changed quite a bit in ways that I couldn't have predicted. And the same goes for you and your life, right? Just take a moment to think back at your life and really piece together the story of yours and just look at how crazy absurd it is. How there were so many twists and turns that you would have never predicted, but how each and every one of those was essential to getting you to who and where you are right now in this moment, having this conversation. And the thing is, when it comes to your story, as much as you're able to connect the dots looking backwards, you can't looking forward because you haven't experienced life yet. As much as you can try and project out those future chapters you want to write, whether it's private equity or grad school or shoot, even like college or moving cities or countries, whatever, and like, it could be anything. You're trying to write the story before it writes itself. Before you get to write all the pages in between, every one of those 2,200 days, those moments that can bring about growth and change. So I encourage you to just take a moment, right? Take a moment and ask yourself, what are my dreams? What do I want out of life? And I'm serious, write it down. Keep it somewhere so you can look back and reflect on how you've changed, how your answer has changed, how your life has changed. Because I have the utmost faith and confidence in you and your limitless potential to be who you want to be, do what you want to do, and create the life of your dreams. So, with that, thank you for your time. Seriously, like, thank you for your time, for having this conversation, and for just thinking about and giving yourself the space to dream, to think differently, to ask the questions. Because someday, whether it's a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, you might just find you live your way into the answer.